Hi everyone, it's Katrina. From diabolical home intruders that will torture you in your sleep to enormous dragons that kidnap princesses, here are 10 creatures from Russian and Slavic mythology. Number 10. The Bannik. The Bannik was a mischievous spirit of the Slavic bathhouse or banya. These sauna-like steam baths are a long-standing tradition of Eastern European culture, especially in Russia and Ukraine. They're known for their physical and spiritual therapeutic benefits and are especially popular in the winter. Makes sense, right? In the past, women even went to the banya to give birth. The Bannock is an old man with wild white hair, a long beard, long claws, and hairy hands. Bathers always reserved the third or fourth session for him and left during that time to give him privacy. They also thanked the Bannock with offerings of soap so that he wouldn't harass them. Given his tendency to invite demons and forest spirits into the banya with him, Christian images were banned to avoid offending the spirit and his friends. The Bannock strangled or poured boiling hot water on anyone who intruded during his sessions, so don't interrupt him. But people were allowed to take advantage of his future predicting abilities by standing at the half-open door with their back turned and asking him a question. If the person's future looked good, the Bannock gently stroked their back, but if there was trouble ahead, he struck them with his claws. When a woman gave birth at the banya, the midwife kept the Bannock away by dipping stones in water and throwing them into a corner to distract him. Wedding guests threw rocks and pottery at the walls for the same purpose before a newlywed couple entered the steam bath together, all to keep safe from the fickle Bannock. Number 9. Kiki Mora. The Kikimora was an evil female house spirit and one of the most frightening creatures of Slavic mythology, who was capable of scaring even the bravest of grown men. Stories about her were especially popular in Polish and Russian households. She entered people's homes through their keyholes and lived behind their stoves or in their cellars. Once she was settled in, she refused to leave and made the occupants' lives miserable, kind of like a poltergeist. This diabolical home intruder caused terrible nightmares, especially for women who were tortured with dreams about losing their children and their husbands cheating. Meanwhile, men dreamed about attractive but hesitant women, which took a progressive toll on their real-life relationships. The Kikimora also sat on people and tried to strangle them in their sleep. In Russian folklore, she was blamed for causing sleep paralysis. She even went further than that and kidnapped and caused illness to small children. Besides being utterly terrifying, the Kikimora was annoying. If someone's house wasn't clean, she broke dishes and whistled. When she was pleased with the housekeeping, she sometimes helped with chores, which, by the sounds of it, was the only nice thing she ever did. Let me help you with the dishes. By the way, I'm going to suffocate you at night. Have a nice day. People protected their homes from the Kikimora by burying a silver object in front of the entrance, placing a broom near the front door, and sprinkling salt in the doorway. If she was already inside, ousting her required some heavy-duty rituals. In the meantime, parents warned their children to avoid making eye contact with the Kikimora by not looking at cabinets and doors at nighttime. Who knows what she might do? Number 8. The Doma Boy. The Doma Boy was essentially the opposite of the Kikimora, a kind household spirit who protected the home. It appeared as a small, bearded man. Doma Boys had shape-shifting abilities and often appeared as the head of the household while helping out with chores and yard work. According to legend, oftentimes when people saw what looked like the head of the household doing work, it was actually a Doma Boy, and the real person was in bed, snoozing away. Once in a great while, a Doma Boy appeared in the form of a household pet, such as a cat or a dog. Although the Doma Boy was generally a friendly spirit, he was also a trickster and harassed the family in similar ways as a poltergeist if their house was unclean, or if the inhabitants were rude, pulling harmless but annoying pranks until their behavior improved. Christian missionaries tried adamantly to remove the notion of the Doma Boy and other pagan characters from the Slavic culture, but many of these traditions nevertheless persisted for centuries. And now for number 7. But first, a big shout out to SR71 Lockhead, Shkrudi David, and Alex and Milan for requesting this topic. Hope you enjoy it. Number 7. Mokosh. Mokosh is a pre-Christian Slavic goddess of earth and fertility who's especially popular in Russian and Eastern Polish mythology. She has a large head and long arms and is symbolized by spiders, spider webs, cloth, and the rhombus. Although her roles vary among different regions, she's arguably the religion's most important deity. Her numerous duties include being the protector of spinning, cattle, tending sheep, women, childbirth, merchants, and fishermen. More generally, she protects humans from drought, disease, and unclean spirits. Mokosh gives life through the weather, as the rain is said to be her breast milk. People worshipped her by praying to breast-shaped boulders and through fertility rituals. They held a festival in her honor on the last day of October, which included dancing in 2 concentric circles. Because Mokosh represented the earth, some Slavic peasants believed it was wrong to spit on the ground. Her legacy continued even after Christianity spread into the Slavic countries during the 11th century, when Mokosh became Saint Paraskeva Payanica. And although Christian missionaries attempted to stamp out Mokosh's original identity altogether, they did not succeed. Number 6. Vodyanoy. The vodyanoy is an evil and vindictive shape-shifting water spirit that appears as an ugly, silt and algae-covered old man with long green hair and a fishtail. He lives in wells and reservoirs of all types, but favors pools near watermills, and can also be found in swamps and rivers. This creepy creature can usually be seen floating on a half-sunken log, and when he's not looking for his next victim, he spends his time playing cards and smoking a pipe. While the vodyanoy is practically invincible in water, he's nearly powerless on land. Because of this, he's seldom seen far from his abode. Bathers who enter the water on a holy day, after sunset, or without first making the sign of the cross, risk being sucked underwater by the creature, whose MO is to take on different forms and deceive his victims before entrapping them. He often targets inexperienced swimmers and lures fishermen closer to the water by placing tempting objects like mirrors and ribbons along the riverbank. Once he sees his target, he turns them into his personal slave for eternity. When the vodyanoy gets angry, he drowns people and animals, destroys watermills, and breaks dams. To avoid his short temper, beekeepers, millers, and fishermen have historically made sacrifices to him. As homely as he is, the vodyanoy is also a ladies' man of sorts. He often targets disinherited or drowned women, or even those who are happily married, and keeps them as his own. Number 5. Baba Yaga. Unlike many Slavic gods and creatures, Baba Yaga does not have a Greek or Roman equivalent. She is unique to Slavic folklore and is one of its most popular fairy tale characters. In some stories, she represents 3 sisters, all with the same name. Baba Yaga appears as an old woman with a very long nose, who flies around in a mortar and pestle and lives deep in the forest in a wooden hut that stands on chicken legs. Like many traditional witches, Baba Yaga carries a broom, but rather than flying on it, she uses it to sweep up her tracks. Whether Baba Yaga helps someone with a blessing or harms them with a curse depends on her mood when you run into her. She guards the forest and only lets people enter after they've passed her test of courage. Baba Yaga aids those she grants passage to with a talisman that will help them with their work. She also has a very dark side, which includes feasting on children and requiring people to outwit her to survive her wrath. When she's feeling especially feisty, she chases people with her broom and forces them to do kitchen work. Pretty extreme, right? From eating children to forcing you to do kitchen work? Doesn't quite seem the same. Nobody knows for sure when stories about Baba Yaga began, but the first known literary reference to her dates back to 1755, and she's been a mainstay of Slavic folklore ever since. Number 4. Vasilisa the Beautiful. Vasilisa the Beautiful is a merchant's daughter with a sweet personality. Her mother passed away when she was young and was replaced by an evil stepmother. Vasilisa's father's new wife enters the marriage with 2 children of her own who overshadow the young girl. They force her to do a lot of work and treat her like a servant, much like Cinderella and her stepmother and stepsisters. Vasilisa's mom gave her a magical doll before she passed away, which helps her accomplish these demanding tasks and accompanies her on adventures. One day, while Vasilisa's father was away, the light went out in her house. Her stepmother sent her into the nearby forest to obtain some light from Baba Yaga, who, might I remind you, is rumored to eat children. Of course, Vasilisa was terrified, and she took her beloved doll with her for protection. Vasilisa asked Baba Yaga for some fire, who in turn required the young girl to complete some tasks that were virtually impossible for any mortal to accomplish. For example, Vasilisa was required to sort a bag of millet by hand and remove all the black bits in just one night. While she didn't have mice or other forest creatures, thankfully her magic doll made this and the other highly demanding tasks possible. What happened next depends on the version of the story. According to one tale, the Baba Yaga refused to give Vasilisa the fire she asked for, even though she completed her work, and instead planned to roast the young girl. Luckily, Vasilisa escaped with her magic doll's help. As she fled the property, she took a skull that was used as a decoration on Baba Yaga's fence, which contained fire. Once home, Vasilisa's evil stepmother and stepsisters burned to ashes. She buried the skull outside the home and moved to the city, where she lived with an elderly woman. One day, Vasilisa gave her elderly housemate a piece of cloth she'd woven and told the woman to sell it. Instead, the old lady took the beautiful handiwork to the palace and showed it to the Tsar's son. He loved it so much, he married Vasilisa and invited the old woman and his new wife's father to come live in the palace. Number 3. Zmej Gordini. Zmej Gordini, or Snake of the Mountains, is a massive Slavic dragon with anywhere between 3 and 9 heads and up to 7 tails, depending on who you ask. He lives in the mountains or forest and sometimes in the water, and spews smoke, sparks, and fire from his many nostrils. Smoke also emits from his ears, and he has copper claws. When Gordini flies on his wings of fire, he blocks out the sunlight. Kidnapping women and besieging cities are among Gordini's favorite activities. He's especially likely to target someone when they disturb him while he's resting or thwart his plans. Good luck distracting Gordini when he's determined to accomplish something or get his claws on someone, however. Unlike Baba Yaga, he also can't be bought off. Usually, Gordini's opponent is a heroic warrior named Dobrina Nikitic. In one tale, when Dobrina hits Gordini, the serpent begs for mercy and the warrior kindly lets him go. But Gordini turns right around and kidnaps a princess, forcing Dobrina to fight him again. This time, they battle to the death, and the fight lasts for 3 days and 3 nights. Dobrina emerges victorious and frees the princess from Zmej Gordinik's cruel captivity. In some stories, on the other hand, the serpent learns to overcome his own evil and even becomes good. Zmej Gordinik and similar creatures frequently appear in contemporary Russian artwork and animation and are the subject of monuments and statues in parks throughout the country. Number 2. Kosh the Immortal. Also known as Kosh the Deathless, Kosh the Immortal was an evil, shape-shifting monarch who was usually depicted as a naked king or a scrawny old man riding on an enchanted horse through Russia's mountains. He was most often seen in human or monster form, although he enjoyed kidnapping women in the form of a whirlwind. In fact, Kosh was most hated for his womanizing ways more than anything. He was absolutely terrified of death. He produced his immortality by casting a protective spell upon himself, but as he later learned, the spell wasn't foolproof. The evil youth-obsessed king removed his soul and stored it inside of a needle, which he placed into an egg, then a duck, then a rabbit, and finally into a sealed iron or crystal chest, which he buried underneath an oak tree on an island. Reminds me a bit of Lord Voldemort. How about you? He doubly protected himself by ensuring that if the chest were ever opened up, the duck and rabbit inside would try to flee. His life became endangered if and when the intruder reached the egg. This meant that the person possessed Kosh's demonic soul, which was contained within the needle inside. If the egg broke, it meant that the needle would also break, and Kosh would instantly age by several hundred years, turning him back into a mere mortal, a dead one at that. In another tale, Kosh started out as a warrior, but his comrades betrayed him and his enemies imprisoned him. Eventually, Kosh broke free from his rusting armor and began avenging those who had wronged him by taking their women captive. Number 1. Vzduhak. Witchcraft was an important component of pre-Christian Slavic culture, where people were already superstitious to begin with. They relied on the services of witches and wizards to protect themselves and their lands from meddling spirits. Vzduhaks were men with special powers that they used for protecting their own villages and attacking others. Each village had one, and he combated Vzduhaks from neighboring villages. Their duels usually occurred up in the clouds. These men had shape-shifting abilities and sometimes fought in animal form. When they fought as humans, they employed a variety of weapons, including sticks that were charred at each end. The source of their power varied depending on the story. Some tales claim that it came from his clothing, while others assert that the Vzduhak made a pact with a demon to acquire his skills. Scholars believe that the tradition stemmed from the Eurasian shaman and that it traveled westward from Siberia into ethnic groups in Eastern Europe. The tradition persisted into modern Slavic culture, especially in Montenegro, and although today's duhaks no longer battle each other, they are viewed as influential spiritual leaders. Thanks for watching! Remember to subscribe and let me know what other mythology you would like to learn about in the comments below. Remember to subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Bye!